Right, so can you come move this table? Because it's ugly. Or you want, please? This one? No, the one in the back. Put it by the cabinet. But yeah. Okay, guys, I'm on a live. No sound detected. Can you guys hear me? It says no sound detected. Hey, Andrea. Okay, let me see. I'm on my laptop. Okay, accept.
All
Hey,
right, can you hear
girl.
me?
Yes, how are you? Thank you for coming on the live. Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, hold on. I did hear you. Now I can't hear you no more. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay, I could hear you. Can you hear me? Right?
Yes.
Okay, okay, awesome. Well, thank you for being on the live.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so I love your introduction. So if you'd love to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Andrea. I've been a nurse for 18 years. I like to post about true crime, healthcare, and politics. I'm a registered nurse. I have my bachelor's in the science of nursing. I am currently working on my master's in nursing leadership alongside with my master's in business administration. And I'm also a member of Sigma Theta Tau, which is the International Honor Society of Nurses.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so I personally I was talking to you earlier and I'm doing a podcast for my school assignment and I just thought that you would be the perfect candidate to do this assignment with because of your background. And so we're going to be talking about third party voting systems. My assignment is to come up with a wicked problem in the political science realm. And so I think that having a two-party voting system and not enough options does not really allow for a citizen or for somebody's voice to actually be heard. So, so what do you, I know that with the outline that we did, um, what are you, I know what do you know about the two-party voting system and then kind of maybe moving on to a three-party voting system?
So, yeah, we were never really meant to be a two-party voting system. That was never something that was written into the Constitution, and it was never something that George Washington ever wanted for us. But people tend to fall into these alliances, right? If you ever watch the show Survivor, especially from the very beginning, alliances were created toward the end of that first season and moving forward. And it's because people feel like they need a community and they needed somebody to kind of rally behind. There was several parties back then, and we've kind of funneled into this two-party system that we are in now. And I agree. I think we need more than a two-party system to kind of get this country back on track to where our founding fathers saw the future and saw the possibilities of what could be done.
Right. And so it's something that I started learning about because it's my major, but I didn't know that we had a previous party called the Whig Party, WHIG, and it was a party before the Republican Party. And so then now we have that withered out, and then now we have the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and then of course we have the other third parties, but that's basically, from my understanding, just to steal votes. And so when you're voting for, when you're placing a vote, you're essentially, with that vote, you're voting against the opponent. And so it's just kind of, also one of the other things that I learned was that campaigns run on money. And so most people, like the Republican campaign and the Democratic campaigns, they garnish they gain a lot of money, and the third parties don't always gain money, and so they're not really able to like go and debate, and so we're not really able to hear them out. So I think that's like another bad, well, it just kind of works against the American people. But within the context of the wicked problems and solutions, do you think that it's even possible? Like, that's even going to be something the American people are going to be, a conversation the American people are ready for?
I think it is absolutely a question that they're ready for. And it's so funny because it's almost like it's the number one problem in America that nobody really wants to talk about, but nobody really understands how to get out of the situation that we're in, right? So there's three main reasons why we're kind of stuck in this two-party system. The number one reason is we don't have options. You know, how often do we see people say, "Well, I voted for the lesser evil," you know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's a true thing. People are starting to vote against what they believe instead of for what they can truly believe is possible. So that's one reason we have a two-party system. Another reason, like you said, is money. Um, Last year or during the election, the Harris campaign raised 1.3 or 139 billion dollars. The Trump campaign raised 145 billion dollars, and then the third place candidate, if you could call her that, would be Jill Stein, and she raised only 2.7 million dollars. So that's significantly lower than what the other two raised. And even all the third party votes together only got 2.13% of the vote. So, you know, money is a huge option or a huge barrier. And another one is people aren't going out there to vote. In 2024, only 73.6% of eligible Americans were registered to vote. And of those, only 65.3% actually turned out to the 2024 vote. So, and that's not even close. Well, it's close to the record, which was 2020, which was 66% of the people showed up. So that's another barrier. Is people aren't coming out to vote. So some of the solutions that we can come up with is first, if you are somebody who is passionate about politics or passionate about people, and it doesn't even have to be all of politics, it could be, you know, just certain parts of politics that you're interested in, you really should get out there and put yourself out there. If you know somebody that is interested in politics, you know, encourage them and then let your friends know about this person. You know, start small. You can start on your city council, you can start on your school board, and then work your way up as you feel more comfortable speaking to people and learning about politics. So that's one solution. You know, if you're passionate and you feel like you can make a change, go out there and do that. 50% of Americans consistently since 2003, over 50% of adults have said that we do need another third party candidate, a major third party that they can choose from. In 2024, that number was 58%. So it's possible. People want those answers. We just have to find somebody that can do that.
Yeah, and
As far as the money,
oh,
oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
No,
Oh, well, I was gonna say, as far as
that's it.
oh, as far as the money goes, grassroots campaigns can make a difference. We saw that with Zoran Mamdani. You know, he was going up against Andrew Cuomo, who had, you know, there's a cap in New York, so both of them raised $8 million. However, Zoran's came from 20,000 individual donors, and the average donation was about $80 a person. So it's possible to raise that money. You just got to kind of put yourself out there um, to be a candidate and, you know, meet with your community and get your name out there. Start these GoFundMe's. So it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that you hit up a lot of really good points, and Something that I kind of learned not from like a teacher or from like a class or anything, but actually from the SEAL Society was the call to action. And that's something that Robin like talked about a lot more. Like there's so many of us that want to like say stuff and speak up and voice our opinion, but there's also got to be that call to action, not just like saying it, but like, you know, being a part of it and doing it and things. And I think that that's kind of like the hard part. It's actually like getting out there and getting involved, you know, but you know, voting and voicing our opinion and things like that. But with the third party system, Jill, I think that that was her name. I know you said her name or mentioned a third party person earlier, but I know that once I was doing the research, and I feel really bad for not remembering her name right now, but she was arrested because they wouldn't let her into the debate. She's like, "No, I want to debate. I want to be able to like voice what my views and things like that for her party." And I think she was, I think maybe the Green Party or the Tea Party or something like that, but she was arrested and that was like a few years ago. Do you know about that?
No, I hadn't heard that, but I'm not completely surprised. They probably told her you aren't invited, you're not allowed here, and that's another thing in politics. It's it's these layers of things. It's these political action committees. It's the lobbyists. It's the businesses. It's all these people with all these interests that are putting their hands into these pots, and the politicians listen to them and do their bidding, and that's the problem. We always talk about that top 1%. Well, what are the rest of the 99.9% doing? We've got to stand up. We've got to do something. Did you know? And I hate to bring race into this, but did you know that white men only make up 7% of the world's population, but yet they
Really?
own the most amount of wealth?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it just takes all of us not only having a voice, but realizing that we have that voice. I was just at a protest a couple of weeks ago. It was I can't even remember what it was, but it was the nationwide protest, and we had one here in my small town. Um, and I was glad I went because I remembered something that I had completely forgotten. That my county seat used to be a Democratic county seat. It was about 20 years ago in 2005. We were gerrymandered, and that's how we've ended up with a Republican seat. My representative is the one who drafted the big bullshit bill, and I absolutely hate it. But there's so many people in this town that are like, well, what's the point of voting Democrat when it's just going to be Republican anyway? And I think a lot of people have forgotten their voice in that. Um, all all the loudness allows them to get drowned out, and so I think people need to kind of focus, find your community, find your local community, find what matters to you, find those people, and then together, you can continue to make changes in your town, and hopefully that will lead to nationwide changes.
Yeah. I feel pretty blessed because I live in San Diego and um it's a blue state, you know, so and my children, we're like 15-20 minutes away from the border, and I've been discriminated against. I was born here, I was born and raised here, but I'm still like, just because I'm Mexican, people have been like, oh, we're gonna call ICE or ICE baby, and I'm like, ICE ain't gonna do shit because I was born here and I've never had a criminal record, so you know what I mean, like, but I know that that's something that like we struggle with. However, it's only online. It's not in person. Like, and like people here are very kind. Like we treat each other very well. We have like a huge like Caucasian community, but they're like they're with people. Like, you know what I mean? Like they just know you live 20 minutes from the border. Like this is the wrong place to live if you want to be racist. We do. We still have racists everywhere. You know what I mean? But it's not, you can't be a proud racist around here. Like you just can't. Like you will have black people, white people, Mexicans, Asians on your ass because it's just not that's just not our decorum here. You know what I mean? Like we're very much about like treat your neighbor, take care of your neighbor, look out for your neighbor. So I feel sad, you know what I mean? Like in another perspective, I'm like, dang, I wonder how like the Trump supporters and the Republicans feel because this state is very much, and this county is very much a blue county. Like no matter how many people like are red, like it's still very much like for the people, you know? And it just sucks because to kind of like split the country like that, to kind of go like Democrat and Republican, and then like that's just like kind of almost defines who you are. But it's not like I find myself, like I said, I don't tie myself to a party because I find myself being a little Republican, a little Democratic, you know what I mean? So I'm like, where do I fit? Where does somebody like me fit where I don't necessarily agree with either candidate and I don't like I have been voting third party for the last couple of elections, and I just found out that it's just kind of like throwing my vote away, you know, but it's just like where does that within the minorities there's like another minority of people, you know, cuz now I'm a minority but I'm like I don't like this either candidate, so where do we go from here? You know, and like you said, definitely um kind of talking about it and letting people know, you know, like their rights or kind of educating people. But you know, right now there's like a there's huge pushback to people that are educated or trying to be educated or you know, like there's huge pushback from people for people like that. I can't even get to tell you how many times this summer I've been called indoctrinated, you know, versus educated because I'm learning, you know, but I'm just grateful that I have been able to like learn in history, and kind of history repeats itself because like I said with like the Whig party and that kind of got dismantled and then the Republican Party came about, or from my understanding, I mean, was it already around and then you kind of replace it, if you will, like it was replaced by the Republican Party? Because from my understanding, that's the only way it could be right now with the way that it is, like one of the parties is gonna have to drop, like the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, so that another party could take its place. You know, and we could try something else. I mean, that's another route that we can go. Um, but I'm not sure. Like, what do you think?
So I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, we've had a couple of parties throughout the years. There was also a Federalist Party, which is really interesting if you want to fall down a rabbit hole in history someday. But there was a Federalist Party as well. So yeah, eventually they all kind of merge, and it's really interesting. One of the arguments that you'll get into online, especially when it comes to slavery, is people always say, "Well, the Democrats had the slaves," but there was an entire party shift back in 1965 during the civil rights era, and so that's when the party shift happens. So
Right.
I just think it's so interesting when we start talking about parties and their evolution. Um, but to get back to your point about is there a third option, I saw something recently and it's kind of stuck with me. It's that millennials, our generation and the generations after us that we're raising our Gen Zs and our Gen Alpha children, we're no longer playing in this system. You know what I mean? We've decided that this system has been rigged and it's not the system that we want to play anymore. And so, what millennials are going to have to do is we're going to have to decide collectively, not we're not breaking the system is already broken. We're going to have to figure out how we rebuild it from here,
Mm-hmm.
because um the boomer generation had all the advantages. They, I saw something recently that said to make the equivalent of what our grandparents made today, we would have to be making $66 an hour
Oh my
across the
gosh.
board. Yes. And so that's the thing. The system was created, but it wasn't created for us, and it
Mm-hmm.
has been manipulated and it has been broken. And so this millennials, we're going to have to be the generation to break that. I don't know whether it be us running in these parties or it being creating a whole new party or just tearing the system down completely and starting all over. Um, but it is going to have to be our generation, 1982 and later, that are going to be the ones that are going to have to fix this mess.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's very, very, very true. And I think that's something that like came up in one of my classes, and it was a question that was like, if you were to talk to the generation 50 years from now, what do you think you're going to say to them? Or what do you think they're going to ask you? What do you think the conversation is going to be? And I think it's very much like, what did we do for them? Like, what did we do to lay out like their future? You know what I mean? Does it stop here? Like, do we defend it, protect it so that they can also have an opportunity, so that they have a chance and they have a voice, like I think I think it's important. I feel like I know a lot of times I've seen people say like we are not our ancestors, and I feel like our ancestors, I feel like did the best that they could to give us to fight for the rights that we have today, and like now I think it's our turn to kind of like preserve it and defend it for the next generation. So I think it is going to be important to continue to fight for them.
I agree. And if there are babies born today and they want to know what I was thinking 50 years from now, I apologize because in the last 6 months, this administration has taken us back further than that. Roe v. Wade has been overturned, something that our grandmothers and our mothers fought for women to have the rights to control their body. He's wanting to throw out mail-in ballots now. There's, let's see, equal opportunity. We still have that by the grace of God because he's trying to get rid of DEI and everything else. So yeah, everything that our ancestors have fought for. And my Spanish isn't very good, but our family has been here, right? Our family is from here. You're more than likely indigenous. I'm indigenous. My family was in Texas before Texas was the United States. It was
Yeah.
in Texas when it was still Mexico.
Mhm.
I'm sure your family was in California the same. So,
Mhm.
for someone to come around and to say anybody on this land doesn't have the rights to do X, Y, and Z, who are you? You know, you,
Mhm.
you're not the original owners of this land, you
Right.
know?
Right. I know it always cracks me up too because they're like, "We won." And I was like, "Y'all are nasty." Like, do you sickle cell? I mean, I'm sorry, sickle cell wrong disease. I'm sorry. Smallpox. I'm sorry, wrong disease. But smallpox killed more, I mean, deceased more people than they did, than weapons and pew pews and stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm like, what other nasty disease are you guys gonna release now? But I mean, I kind of hate getting into it like that, but yeah, like this country was definitely, and then it's the new world, and I've had to write about it, like in assignments and stuff. Like I've had to like write about the like what it is, like the truth, like my from my people, like like my people were Aztecs, and like my a lot of my family still lives like in Puebla and in Guerrero, and my mom was born in Mexico City, you know what I mean? So how do you ignore that? And then being on this side where at first it was just so weird. Like I've always been proud to be Mexican American, like grew up like that. And then at the beginning of the year when the new administration took over, all of a sudden I had to choose. Like I had to denounce one of my cultures. Like if I was going to be an American, I was going to be an American. I had to just denounce being Mexican. Like America first. Like I had to put America first, me being American first. Like what? Like why can't both of them matter? Why can't I be proud to be, you know what I mean? Like it's just a lot. I think it's a lot of pressure, or if they try to put a lot of pressure. I don't really do the peer pressure, but I've seen the change that has happened, and I don't know. I don't think I've ever had to live through a president like this. I've read about it in books. I've read about, like hard moments for Americans, but I don't think I've ever like lived through a presidency or like through a president's term where they were causing issues. And we were like, what are you talking about? Like now all of a sudden. But like I said, I'm grateful that I live in San Diego where neighbors are not fighting. You know what I mean? I've seen other places like LA and people are like telling on each other. My neighbors, I feel bad, but I mean, a few months ago they got deported. Like my neighbors, like because I mean, I don't know how they ended up getting deported, but me and my kids were already like, we're gonna protect them. If I shows up, we're gonna be like, let me see your warrant. Like, I need to see a warrant. Like, you're not walking through here unless like I see a warrant. So we're very much committed to like protecting them. But the things that I have seen in the last 6 months, it's unbelievable. Like, I've never seen that in my life.
Yeah, our small community is starting to be in the find out stage. I'm in a town with about somewhere between 150 and 250,000 people, but we have a lot of small communities. And one of the small communities who votes all red is upset right now because one of their favorite school counselors, who was always helping with the kids, who would help in the library, help in the cafeteria, help at the bus, is facing deportation, and they don't understand why. You
Mm,
know, and it's just like, you did this. And so it's it has been really good for bringing together the Democratic Party in my area. And I'm not dedicated to a party. I'm dedicated to ideals. I'm dedicated to humans. That's my thing, is how people, I care about people. I care about healthcare. And so
mm-hmm,
I'm not dedicated to a party. However, in this administration right now, it's, you either are with them or you're helping everybody else. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
Um, it's very frustrating, especially, I told you I'm working on my master's. And so I started as a CNA. So I've been in the healthcare field for 25 years, even though I've only been a nurse for 18. And so I
mm-hmm,
got my CNA license when I was 17. So there's very little about healthcare that people can tell me that I don't understand, especially now that I've got my master's, because now I understand it not only from the bedside, but as a systemic level and globally. And so it just blows my mind when these people are in the comments online and just, bacteria is for woke people. What? No, bacteria doesn't care who you are. You know,
mm-hmm.
it's just, I don't understand. I just don't get it. They're listening to a man who took his grandkids swimming in a shit creek, and this man's telling you not to get your immunizations. I don't understand what's going on.
Right.
It's just so bizarre.
Yeah. I know. I think I've had multiple conversations with several classmates, and every week we do like reflections, depending on what class. But there was a class this summer where I was doing reflections every week, and a lot of it was based on like social media reflections, because that's where I like talk to people and gain different perspectives. I mean, your classmates are gonna mostly be like, yeah, they give you different perspectives about the same topic, and they mostly like agree, but online it just was like so crazy, and I just don't understand. I'm like, we live in the same country, like what do you guys want? Like, and I know that taxes, so I was super inspired because at first I hated taxes. I'm like, no, I just don't understand why we have to pay all these taxes and all these taxes and all these taxes. And this one marine, I think he was a marine or a navy guy, but he was in the military and he was on a live, and they were like, with the when the whole Doge thing came out, they're like, you're okay paying taxes and blah blah blah. And this guy, he said, "Yeah, I'm okay paying taxes because that's the American way." And I swear I had never wanted to pay taxes in my life until that moment. And I was like, this is the American way. Like the American way is paying taxes, like ever since I was born. For I mean, I looked it up and I was like, okay, the taxes only came about 100 years ago. Like 1914, 1912, something like that is when they started like enacting the taxes, because like they needed it to like fund some other, some things or whatever. So they needed it from us. So that's when we started paying like a large amount of taxes, and something with the war also. But only 100 years ago did we start having to pay taxes. Before that, it wasn't like that, and I think there were great opportunities if you when you didn't have to pay taxes, but as of 100 years ago, we've had to, and I don't know. I feel like it's done a great thing for the community. I know somebody was attacking me on the phone, like, go back to, being a keyboard warrior on your Obama phone. I'm like, I don't have an Obama phone. I've never had an Obama phone. You know what I mean? But they're like, but wouldn't mind helping people that need phones. You know what I mean? Like I live in San Diego. It's super expensive here. People fall on hard times. You know what I mean? Like this city is for people that are well off. Like if you don't have two or three jobs or live with roommates or helping each other out, like how are you making it? You know what I mean? So sometimes people fall on hard times. And from what I know, because I've worked in the community, an Obama phone only works for 3 months. After 3 months, first of all, it runs out of minutes, so you can't be on it unlimited time, unless you're like on Wi-Fi. But also, like after 3 months, you can like get onto a plan. I think it's like $15 a month or something like that. So it's not completely free, you know. It's you, for 3 months you're like, you can have people call you, or like if you're applying for a job or something like that, I think it's very helpful. So it's not something you're going to be on for free forever, and I think for people that need it, it's very beneficial, you know. And people of need it, not only one amount, like one group of people need it, not just Mexicans. I've seen white people need it, you know what I mean? And like people that fall in hard times. Everybody, all human beings at one point or another are going to fall in hard times. And you're very lucky and blessed if you have family to help you. But what if you don't? You know? Then who helps you? Like, we're supposed to look out for our neighbor. So I just feel like in that sense too, like I said, like I'm it's kind of hard when you have like the Democrats about that and then the Republicans not about that. And then you're like, well, what if I do kind of agree with that? You know, but also there has to be some limitations, if you will, to certain things. How do I vote? Who do I vote for? You know what I mean? Like how do I get my voice heard in that sense?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so strange because either party, they're not willing to bend or fold on their candidates. It's almost like your candidates have to feel absolutely 100% this way or we don't want them as your candidate. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And both sides are that way, you know? And there's, I would say the controversial side on the Republicans, well, both sides would have to be, abortion rights and, gender assignments, right? Those are the two major topics when it comes to either both of them or immigration. Those are the three major topics. Uh, but immigration, I don't like to put that in there because I feel like immigration is neither here nor there. People deserve rights regardless of whether they're here or not. The Constitution was made for that, for people to have their right to due process. But as
Hmm.
far as the bending and folding with the other two issues, with the abortion or with the abortions and the gender identity issues, it's almost like I wish there was a candidate that was like, I agree with this, but we have to have X, Y, and Z in place for both of those issues. You know what I mean? And it seems like neither party is willing to bend or fold or meet in the middle on what's appropriate. You know what I mean? Because those are two of those issues that are very polarizing. There's very few people in the middle. And honestly, if you were to ask anybody, and this may be more so in California than it is in Texas, but if I were to ask anybody in Texas if they knew anybody who had either had one of those had an abortion or was struggling with gender identity, they couldn't name me one,
Really?
out of this whole town.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so it
think
doesn't it's
here. Uh-huh. But
oh
I
yeah,
think
so
here I oh,
uh
go ahead, and then I'll tell you what I was gonna say.
oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, go ahead. But I was just gonna say, yeah. But in Texas, a lot of times people are voting for things that are so not even in their business. Like I feel like if more people here minded their business the way it used to be, we'd probably be a lot better off. But everybody wants to get in everybody else's business, you know.
Right. I know. I love this term. I mean, I'm not sure if it came from him, but he's the first person I heard it from. But J. Cole, in one of his rap songs, he expresses and he says, what I eat does not make you shit. And I just love that because it's like, because it is such a big thing. I'm straight. Like I've always been straight. You know what I mean? But like I don't have anything against gay people. Like that does not bother me. You know what I mean? What you eat does not make me shit. So why would I care? You know, like I think, and then also I feel like with that, like I worked at a school and I would see kids like kindergartners or like kids in preschool, fifth graders. It didn't matter, you know what I mean? Elementary school would their parents would come for award ceremonies, and some of the kiddos had two mommies and some of the kiddos had two daddies. And I think it was just important for people to know, like, you know, family dynamic. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of bullying also. So it's just kind of like, that doesn't mean that that somebody's gonna like convert your child. You know what I mean? It just means that to be understanding and aware that there's a world out there where people have two mommies and two daddies. You know what I mean? So I think that that part that always like would, but also I think the biggest thing is the Bible. Like I love Jesus, I love God, but to always put so much, and then I'm like sitting there learning about politics. I'm like, I thought there was a huge separation of state, of church and state. You know what I mean? Like we don't make our decisions in like in our states, we don't make our decisions based on the Bible. Like, and also because America doesn't have like one religion. You know what I mean? Like we have a freedom of religion. Also, it's in the First Amendment. So it's just kind of like I get what they're trying, I get what people are trying to do, and it's like, oh, don't you want to be like the the country that like lives for God and does things, godly and stuff like that, but then again, it's just kind of like the colonization of it, because when this land first, happened, they didn't have that belief. So now you're like completely continuing to like let people believe what they want to believe. I don't know what to say. It's just like now everybody has to believe the same thing. And my one of my communication classes, one of the things that my professor said on day one was if everybody if everybody's thinking the same thing, somebody isn't thinking. You shouldn't all be thinking the same thing. Somebody should have a different idea. Everybody should have their own thought process. You guys could definitely come to a consensus and an agreement, but you should have a different idea than this person. You know what I mean? Not everybody should be agreeing on the same thing just for what? And I feel like a lot of that is happening in this administration. They're just agreeing with them.
Right, right. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's we're living in an episode of The Emperor's New Clothes where they'll just, they're a bunch of yes men's and they'll tell him he looks fantastic. But yeah, and it's very interesting that you bring that up because people always say, "Well, this is a Christian nation." No, no, they left because they were leaving religious persecution. So, at what point do you think that they would want to do that to somebody else? Um, this is for your humanities, you said, I believe, or was one of your humanities credits. So for one of my humanities credits, I did American literature, and I really credit that class with teaching me about what the founding fathers originally had intended, because the American literature class started with a lot of the poetry that was going around along around the times, um, prior to and before the American Revolution. And it was it was after the American Revolution, in which, we have now broken free from our kingdom and we are now our own country and we're founding ourselves. It is at that point when people started beginning to wonder, well, what does it mean to be free? And why am I free? And why is that black and brown person over there
Hmm.
not free? And so that's when it began to transform. And as a country, as we continue to grow and as we continue to learn, that's the progress we're supposed to be making. You know what I mean? When I think about healthcare, they always say, oh, well, it's impossible to have universal healthcare. It'll never work. Well, then why do the other 22 um, first world nations have universal healthcare with no problems? You know what I mean? It's just this country is meant to learn and grow and to evolve. We're meant to learn and grow as evolve as humans. And I just feel like right now we don't have that. And a lot to your point to, people calling you indoctrinated and not educated, it's disheartening. It's very disheartening, especially when you and I have worked so hard to,
Hmm.
get to where we are. We have families, we have other obligations, and we're, having to do our best to get through these classes. And it's because we want to learn and we want to better ourselves, just to have some redneck around the corner tell you, that you don't know anything, because he
Right.
heard it on Fox News. And so it's very frustrating, and I get frustrated too. And here's the thing, I was never this way. I was never like, I actually voted for Trump in 2016 because I wasn't educated back then, and I thought, what can a businessman do for our country? And at first he was doing great, but then toward the end it got bad. And then, so for me, the first strike was January 6th, because the reason I love politics is I love decorum. I love order. There's a flow to things. You have to have the gavel. You have to have permission to speak. I need to have two people vote for me. I love that. And so when January 6th happened, and he essentially just poo pooed all over that. That was strike one for me. Strike two for me was when his judges overturned Roe v. Wade. And I'm a religious person, but there again, just like I love J. Cole, by the way. I'm glad you quoted him. But just like J. Cole said, whatever you eat is not what I shit. So I don't, you go do you,
Mhm.
boo. You know,
Mhm.
um, you're the one who has to answer in the end to whatever your religion you believe. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it's just, I can't, I lost my train of thought where I was going with that. Where was I going with that? I can't remember, but either way, it's just it's frustrating. It's very frustrating to
Yeah.
just know that we can do better as a country and see where we are. So,
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that I was saying, like, because a lot of times I've heard, like, learn your history so you don't repeat it or it doesn't repeat, like, or like learn your history so people don't tell you about it, and they don't tell you what they want you to know. Like, learn about history, like, just learn it and stuff. But then, I mean, the whole indoctrination thing, it's if when I looked up the definition of both indoctrination and educated, because I'm like, okay, what's the language here, basically indoctrination is being taught something where you cannot think. Like, you're not supposed to ask questions, you're not supposed to come up with your own thought, they're supposed to be like, this is how it is and this is what you're going to believe, and that's it. That's being indoctrinated. At school at SDSU, we're taught to think for ourselves. That's why we have reflections. Reflect on the week. Like, my teacher's not telling me what I need to be thinking. She's giving me a topic or like guidance of where to go, but I have to come up with all of this by myself. Hence the reason why we're doing the podcast. You know what I mean? Or this podcast, because I'm supposed to like come up with, we're supposed to be able to have discussions and come up with it. I've learned so much from people. There was somebody was on my live a few months ago when Trump gave his first like presidential address or something, and he was on, I was like trying to figure out, like, I really didn't know how I felt, but I'm like, let's talk about this. And one of the people that was on the live, excuse me, he told me he voted for Trump. He was like, I'm black and I voted for Trump and stuff, and he gave me his reasons why. And one thing that he said that stood out to me, that even till this day I'm like, he's right. You know what I mean? He was right about that. He was like, when we're talking about education and dismantling education, I'm like, why would he be doing that? Like, why? Like, you're supposed to invest in it. Why would you take that away? And he was like, well, he was like, I don't disagree with taking it away because we're like 47 out of like out of all the countries. And he was like, for us to be giving this much money and this much funding to education, we shouldn't be at 47. We should be at like 210. You know what I mean? Like, we should be a little bit higher than we are to be having this much money. So where's it going? And then I was like, you know what? That's a great point. I'm not going to disagree. You know what I mean? When you bring up a good point, you bring up a good point. No matter where you were or whatever, like who you voted for. So I even till this day, sometimes when people talk about education and dismantling education, I'm like, of course it's wrong and you shouldn't. Like, if you see it's at 47, like, to try to figure out how to bring it to number 2 or number 10, or in one of the tops, but to just completely like dismantle it all together and be like, this doesn't work, it's kind of messed up, and obviously we know that a lot of people that are not educated are going to be voting or not voting wisely, you know what I mean, like not voting, or they're just going to be believing anything that's being told to them, versus being like knowing history and knowing like, well, this didn't work or this did work or this person did this, or Hooverville. Like, I think it's so insane how Hoover and Hooverville happened almost 100 years ago to the date, and Trump is in office. You know what I mean? And like his tariffs, and like, do you not learn, man? Like, do you not know? I would want to be sitting there studying like all presidents and be like, who did the best, who did bad, how can I get better? Like, you know what I mean? Like, making my name like in a good way, not in a bad way. And I really feel like he's gonna be here. There's already documentaries about him. You know what I mean? How unfit he is. Like, can you imagine the documentaries in 50 years? You know?
I've been
So,
seeing people that said Trump's been the worst president since Trump, and I just like that's true. But yeah, exactly. But yeah, I see, and there again, that kind of goes back to that wanting a third party because at the same time, I agree. I don't feel like we should be spending all this money in B-47, but at the same time, we do need that money. So it's more about. I do agree that we needed the Department of Government Efficiency. Did it need to be run by the billionaire and the world's richest man? Absolutely not. You know what
hmm
I mean? And I know there's inefficiencies in government. Let me okay. So a few years ago, my friend, she had adopted a child, and she had gotten like a tax reimbursement or something like that for adopting a child. And so then she had gotten audited by the IRS, and I had gone with her to the IRS office. And she's explaining to this woman, well, I got this letter in the mail today, and that's why I'm here to see you. And that lady's like, we didn't send you that letter. And she's like, I have the letter. I have the letter. It's in my car. I can go get it for you. And she's like, yeah, go get the letter because I don't know what letter you're talking about. I've never heard of that letter. We don't have any documentation of us sending you that letter. Like that form doesn't exist. Go get it. So she ran and grabbed it, and I sat there waiting with this woman so that we wouldn't lose our place in line. So she comes back, hands her the letter, and that lady goes, oh, now I know what you're talking about. So, like that right there shows me the inefficiency. At that time, I was working as a breast navigator, and I had a program that would show me what documentation had been sent to my patients. If I'm at a small hospital in the middle of Texas and I have a more efficient program than the IRS does, then yes, we do have some issues. But there again, I don't think it should have been the world's richest man to go in there and do it. I think it should have been a bipartisan committee, gone through the whole vetting process, all that thing, all that stuff. That's the stuff that rubs me rawest is that we're breaking quorum. And I say that now as the Democratic House leaders are breaking quorum, but that's different. That is a protest. What Donald
right.
Trump is doing is just trying to take over, you
Yeah, he's
know?
like changing the whole constitution. I think that that was something that kind of like made me like see, I don't know. I didn't really have anything really good or bad to say about him. The first presidency, I just remember him like having zero filter and saying like some crazy things, especially when it came to like COVID and him being like calling it like the flu virus or whatever. You know what I mean? Like whatever he was saying, I was like, that is so rude. Like as a president, you shouldn't be doing that, you know? But then I was like the second time around, and then J6 happened, which I had never been a part of. I had never been alive to like experience that. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's ever actually like happened in history where that's ever really happened, like
It hasn't.
I that I've ever even heard of. I think the closest that it's ever gotten to like I think so the presidents I remember when I was little were that I remember were Bill Clinton, and I remember doing like this mock vote, and I don't even remember
Yeah,
who
we
he was
did that
going up
too.
against. Yeah, but we did that in school, and we did like a little mock vote, and we were like, who'd you vote for? And I was like, Bill Clinton. Who'd you vote for? And like it was the same, consensus that we all voted for Bill Clinton in like fourth grade or something. And then after that, I think it was like Bush and Al Gore. I just remember there was like a big drama with Bush and Al Gore. And I just remember it was just kind of like everywhere and it was like stealing the vote. But even then, none of the J6 happened with Al Gore and Bush, So it was just kind of like, and I just remember Bush being pretty hated. I do remember that. I remember like people egging his car or whatever. It was like raining and there was like a bunch of people that didn't like him. And it was, I don't know. I do remember that the drama, but I don't remember it being like this. You know what I mean? Like this separated, like this divided, like this different. This and I feel like my biggest issue with Trump is that he's trying to change the Constitution. Bro, you took an oath to defend and protect the Constitution, not to change it. So how do you all of a sudden now want to change it? And I'm not gonna lie, but I was at church and I heard like somebody like they'll tell you like, oh, you can say your prayers right now, your petition for your prayers out loud or in your heart. And I literally heard somebody say that they were praying for a new democracy. And so I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is literally, there's literally human beings out here, like, on board with Trump changing our democracy. And they're in church praying about it. Like, I just couldn't believe it, but
You you wouldn't make it one weekend down here. You would die. You would die. You would be like,
probably,
"Take me back to California. Take
probably,
me back." It's a
probably.
struggle. Texas used to be great. Let me tell you. So, and that's what kills me. So, Texas has been in Republican rule for 30 years. I'm 42, so I can remember a little bit of time when we had Governor Ann Richards. We called her Queen Anne. She was a Democrat and she was fantastic. The education back then, oh my God, we learned so much back then. And then
Hmm.
she wasn't there no more. And then we got the task test, which is our standardized test. And we've had standardized tests ever since then. So for the last 30 years, we've had standardized tests, and it's not going well. Not going well.
Dang. Yeah, I don't. I don't know. And it's just like with this whole standardized test, like what I don't know. I think even that department, like for the education, it needs some kind of change. You know what I mean? Because the education system is just kind of like college is different than like elementary and middle school and high school. You're being taught. Like you're being taught and you're being quizzed on what you're being taught and based on memory and if you can remember what you're being taught. College, you're being taught, but you're still having to put your own. Like this is your own voice, like your own thoughts, critical thinking. It's a big part of it. But in the other schools, like growing up, like and they don't even tell you the truth. I remember my daughter I was learning about this, in community college. So I would come home and I would like teach them, or I would watch the videos or the documentaries, whatever. I would be doing my homework and my kids would be there. And my kids are mixed. I'm Mexican and their dad's black. And so, like, I just having to share it. But I remember learning about Clementine and like literally the Clementine song, like, oh my darling, oh my darling. Well, there's a story behind her that like she was in trouble and like there's a video but there's like she was in trouble and there was like this black man that was coming to her aid but in her mind she was like oh this big monster coming to attack me and he's like just literally trying to help her and she's like screaming and crying and this lady literally the story is that she literally jumped off the cliff and like drowned so that he would never even touch her like she didn't even want him to touch her at all even to help her so she like jumped to her demise so that she wouldn't be touched by this black man. And like but the song or the story that they tell the kids they don't tell you that they don't tell you she was racist. And so like when I learned about it I told my daughter and then she was learning about it like in third or fourth grade and she literally was so mad she like stormed out of the classroom and then the teacher was like what's going on like and she was like that's a lie you're lying to the kids tell them the truth about Clementine tell them that she was racist and then her teacher was like I can't tell them that this is school we can't tell the kids that she's like this is a lie like she was literally so mad so the teacher was like you can stay out here until the end of like the lesson but she was like you have to come back in the class you know what I mean like you can't just be out here but I remember my daughter coming and telling me that story and then her teacher also like sending me an email and then like calling her like us connecting over the phone because of that incident. And it was like she was just kind of like I'm glad that you're teaching her but like here we can't be sharing that information like with the other students and stuff and I'm like no I get it. But she was like, "Well, you teach your daughter. I can't tell you what to teach her. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually your job as a parent to like be teaching her." But yeah, I like always, I do remember that. Like, I remember, you have to try to teach your kids because they won't tell you everything in school. And then literally, we went to Cuyamaca College because there's like a museum for like Native Americans, and it's beautiful. You know what I mean? But they had to sing this Christopher Columbus song. I was to
Oh
sing
my
that song
God.
skip that song. I was like, I'm not singing it. They're like, they gave us a paper. They're sitting there and they're singing it. I'm like, I'm not singing that shit. Like, no way. But you know what I mean? Like, you're honoring the wrong human being.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That's like down here we had an argument because I'd be going into the local news and I'd just be trolling MAGA because there's nothing else to do. And so it just kills me because like the other day we got into this whole argument about um they were all proud because they're re putting back up all the Confederate soldier statues all over the place, and it's like, are you for real right now? And they're like, it's history. I said, yes, you're right, we have to learn history, but let's not honor the wrong parts. Like, why can't we have a
Mm-hmm.
Harriet Tubman statue? Why can't we have a Sojourner Truth statue? Why can't we have
Mm-hmm.
Sacagawea statue? You know, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
talk all about history and stuff, it's very frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was that one guy, oh my gosh, I don't know his first name, but but last name is Brown Box Jr. or something like that. But he was the slave that literally mailed himself in a box and mailed himself out of slavery because of like the divide, like the South was enslaved and the North wasn't. So he put himself in a box and he mailed himself to like the NAACP office in the North. And so he barely was alive. Like it's insane. Like his story is insane. But like, you know what I mean? This is stuff that we need to be able to like learn, that we need to be able to like talk about. Like I had no idea that there was a guy like who literally a slave who literally put himself in a box and got himself mailed to the North, and then they like uncovered him, and then after that though, that's when they started like checking more and more because they were like, oh, somebody else is going to do it again. But he was sharing his story, and so one of the bad things about sharing his story was that they were checking the mail more, you know what I mean, to make sure that nobody was like
Mhm.
mailing themselves out. But there's also a story about that the slave, that he was like an amazing mathematician, and like nobody, but they would also use him as like a prop, and they're like, look at this, that he can do math off the top of his head. But it was like he basically gave black people like hope, because a lot of people were thinking, oh, because they weren't being taught how to read and write, they were dumb. And so, but this man had this gift of numbers, and he wasn't like, he was the one doing it's incredible, like the history that's out there that we still do not know, that people like, they're not being taught, or we're still not talking about it as much as we should, you know. But
Right. Until we come to terms with the fact that this country is created by amazing people of all genders, races, nationalities, religions. You know, this country was built on the backs of slaves. And until we can recognize all the contributions that these people have given, we're never going to move forward. You know what I mean?
exactly. Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I do hope that, in conclusion, I do hope that we come together and try to figure out, like, yeah, I mean, even just for like us, like, I know a lot of people are like, that's what I voted for, that's what I voted for, but like, what about like your grandchildren and your children? And I feel like it is a little bit hard because there is like a lot of racism and like the white supremacy, like they just don't care. Like they're just kind of like, whatever, we don't care. Like we trust our white president. You know what I mean? He's got our best interests at heart. So it's just like
Yeah.
I just don't see them really like carrying. And also, like, I think it was on TikTok where somebody was like, oh, the little boy that went missing, the 7-month old that went missing, that has like
Oh, girl.
disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And then his mom said that somebody was like hola or whatever, and then like she doesn't remember anything. And so like to put that, like, and so somebody said like, oh dang, I can't believe that people are still doing that, they're still using Hispanics to like put on as bad people, and especially right now with the climate, with the whole like, oh, illegals are bad, they're criminals, they came to like do bad things to Americans, you know what I mean? So I feel like with the climate and like her using a Hispanic, I mean, if that's what really happened, then they should definitely pay the price. But if not, then why would you add more fuel to that fire? And there was this white guy, and I can say that because he is. and he was like, "Oh, why are you guys always focused on that and stuff?" And I was like, "You will never know. Like, you will never know. I was born and raised here, and people still discriminate against me, and I have to tell them like, I ain't gonna do shit, and neither are you, because I was born here. You know what I mean? But people at any given point, if you look Mexican, they're already profiling you. You know what I mean? Like, oh, let me see your papers, stuff. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Again, it's not as common here. I've heard a lot. I've anytime I've heard about that, it's always been online. But I've never had somebody come up to me in San Diego here. Though there have been, like, even last week there was somebody that got picked up at an elementary school, and it sucks, because I guess he was using like his cousin's social security number, so he was he was frauding, I guess, or whatever, the system. So, but I mean, I don't know. They didn't have. I don't think they had to pick him up at like the school. They could have picked him up at the house or at his place of employment. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the school was the best place to have to do that. But yeah. So it's just, I don't know. All I could tell my people. All I could tell the people is like, be careful, especially right now. Like, just be careful, like, even Americans. That's something also I try to tell, like, when I go on lives. I'm like, do understand, like, even as an American, if I get arrested or I get in trouble, I lose opportunities. You know what I mean? It's not just other people. Like, anytime you get caught up in this justice system here in America, you kind of, it kind of screws you over. So especially like,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah, especially if you don't have papers, or you're kind of like, like getting that in order. Just try not to do anything that's gonna like get you caught up, or like ruin or mess up your chances.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so my final thoughts, because it's getting late. It's
I
almost
know,
midnight
girl.
here
I'm
in
like, thank
Texas.
you so much. I know, and I'm like 9:45. I'm still doing good on time. I've got enough time to edit it and send it. But I appreciate you. I know you're 2 hours ahead and you've already stayed up. So thank you, thank you. But yes, please give us your final thoughts.
Yeah, so final thoughts. We've got to get people that want to make a difference, people that want to make a change. Did you get a phone call?
No, I think it's TikTok doing, hold on really quickly. It's telling me that it's at the hour, so it's making me do the puzzle thing. Hold on.
Oh my God.
I
I didn't
know,
know
but
that was a thing. I've never been on longer than 30 minutes.
oh, yeah, sometimes at
Oh,
the
I've never
hour.
hosted either.
What, girl, you need to. You have such good
Oh,
like,
no, I ain't got time.
yeah, I know
I'm
that
working on my
that's that
master's,
part.
remember?
Yeah, no, for real. But
Usually the only time I go live is when we're on vacation and we're looking at something interesting. I'm like, oh, look at
um
this.
But I love your videos. You know what I mean? Like, the hard part about being live is if you're not live and the person doesn't post the live, that you miss it. You miss the discussion. But
Yeah.
when you do a video and you're able to post it, people just, like, they're able to view it and view it and view it. But I love your posts. Like, I love, if you guys do not, I don't even know how many people are on here, but if you guys do not follow Andrea, please go follow her. Go watch her videos. You will learn so much. But
I
um
love my latest thing is this whole AI. I love talking about AI. It's like my favorite thing to talk about right now.
I know,
But
honestly.
anyways, okay.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Tell me.
I was gonna say, we'll go back to this discussion. We'll have to have an AI discussion another day.
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, final thoughts on this is we need people to step up, people that are knowledgeable, that have compassion and empathy and want to see a change. We're going to need them to step up. We're going to have to do these grassroots movements where we're working together to raise money. We can do it. And the last thing is to get people out there and voting. Peer pressure, tell your friends, tell your friends' friends, tell your family, and get people excited to vote again. Those are going to
Mm-hmm.
be the three things that we're going to have to do to try to get either a third party or find a third party solution.
Mm-hmm. Really quickly, how do you think? What are some of your ideas on getting people excited to vote again?
We're gonna have to find those candidates that they want. I think if you find your local candidates, you can kind of build from there. Um, Talk to people, find out. Oh, that's the important thing. Find out what people really want. when you really sit and speak with people individually one on one, and you can kind of get an idea of what they need or what they're looking for in life. At the end of the day, we all want the same things. We want a healthy family, we want to be able to work and come home and have some relaxation time, maybe a little bit of vacation money. We At the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We just want our family safe and we want to be happy. And so I think if we can talk to these people and find out what it is that they need in their lives to make this place better, then we can begin that conversation to find that candidate that can encompass all the things and is not so far left or so far right.
Okay, love that. Okay. Some. Well, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and perspectives. And even though the assignment's due tonight, I would still love to, like, at some point in the future, continue to have like more conversations and stuff like that because you have some really good thoughts and insights. But if not, I'm gonna be on your
Yeah, we
beach
should totally
anyways.
schedule. Yes. Yeah, we should totally schedule some go lives where we can just sit and BS. And then if people want to come in and BS with us and chit
Hmm.
chat, we can totally do that.
Okay, I'm down, especially because, oh wait, no, next November is when we have the midterms, huh?
Yes, we'll
Yeah.
see how that goes. I've got
Well, we'll
I've been
definitely.
calling Governor. Oh, I was gonna say I've been calling Governor Abbott every day, but somebody said that they forwarded his phone number to somewhere in San Diego. So if you hear a
What?
random phone ringing,
Yeah. Then it's you. But no, yeah, I think before that, I know that a lot of topics will come up, so we'll definitely have opportunities to have conversations about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much
Of
for
course.
having me.
All right. Well, have a good night. Thanks, everybody.
You too.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye. I'm like, how do I end this? I don't know how to end this. How do I end this on the laptop?